All right, it's time to go over or start going over photosynthesis. It basically takes light energy and converts it into chemical energy. Think in terms of first law of thermodynamics. This is going to be a transference and a transformation. So it's coming from the sun, going into the plants, going from electromagnetic energy, and eventually it's turning into chemical potential energy. There's a rainbow. Um, Organisms that do photosynthesis will be plants, algae, um, other protozoans, really. I think, because algae is actually a type of protist. So some protozoans that move around actually do have chloroplasts in them and photosynthesize. And then some prokaryotic cells will do photosynthesis, but not necessarily like we're going to be going over. Um, so photosynthetic organisms will feed themselves, but what they also do is they're responsible for bringing energy that's outside of Earth. Really, it's from the sun, and kind of bringing it into our like ecosystems or biosphere. Really. So here's some plants. You can see some ferns, some trees, different types of flowers, just to name a few. Here's algae. All different types of algae. A lot of people don't necessarily consider algae a multicellular organism. They kind of consider what's called colonial, but this looks like something similar to kelp to me. Here we have what looks like to me like something called euglena. So it's got a little flagella you can see here. Looks like it looks like an S, and then inside it, it's green. It has some chloroplasts, so it can move around, find food, and make its own food. Cyanobacteria used to be called blue-green algae, but it's really a bacteria. Purple sulfur bacteria, which I don't really know much about. Looks kind of interesting though. Anyway, per like the cell unit, chloroplasts were thought to have evolved from like a prehistoric photosynthetic bacteria or phototroph. Anyway, in plants, you're going to find lots of chloroplasts in the leaves of a plant, and they're what give like the leaves their green color. Chlorophyll is kind of one of the main pigments that does that. Anyway, if you look at, if we look at this leaf here, you can see like there's layers to it. There's what we call like an epidermal layer. It's kind of like our skin. It's like waxy, but it's also transparent or translucent. Light can get through it because the light's going to get to these layers here, and different types of what's called mesophyll. The top one here is called the palisade mesophyll, and then the bottom one is the spongy mesophyll. The palisade mesophyll is really kind of built to collect sunlight. Just how it's really like they're very long, and the chloroplasts are kind of scattered throughout there. And then you have like a vein. That's where the sugar from the photosynthesis could go in there and go down to the roots, and then likewise, water is coming up from the roots. Anyway, if you were to take one of those, one of the cells, and this is looks like a spongy mesophyll cell that it's taking from, you can see there's also lots of chloroplasts in there, and then you can see electron micrograph of a chloroplast. So some of this really, hopefully, is somewhat of a review. Our basic photosynthetic chemical equation is the opposite of cellular respiration. So cellular respiration is we're taking sugar, getting oxygen, and we're making carbon dioxide, water, and chemical energy. In this case, we're taking carbon dioxide, water, and then a form of energy, this being light energy. We're making sugar, we're making oxygen. So that's pretty much it. with that equation, the chloroplasts take water and they split it into like hydrogen ions and then oxygen gas. That's where the oxygen in photosynthesis actually comes from. And then it basically grabs the electrons and utilizes them for stuff, which we'll go over later. So if we're trying to like pay attention to what is going where, so with the water, the oxygen from water is making O2 gas, and then the hydrogen from water is being the hydrate and carbohydrates. All right, and then the carbon and oxygen from carbon dioxide are also going to make they turn into sugar. You notice we have like 6 H2Os in the products, but you didn't see it here. Well, and that's because you're doing like a net. We make 6 waters, and we might use 12. So the net is we take 6 carbon dioxides and 6 waters, and then we make stuff. Okay. It's a redox process, much like cellular respiration. Water is oxidized, so it's losing electrons. CO2 is reduced, so it's gaining electrons. And compare that to cellular respiration, where like the carbon or the sugar is actually being oxidized, and the oxygen is being reduced. Anyway, there's 2 parts to photosynthesis. There's the light reactions or the dark reactions. A lot of times the Calvin cycle or Calvin-Benson cycle is called the dark reactions. Sometimes the light reactions are called the light-dependent reactions, and then the Calvin/dark reactions are called the light-independent reactions. So depending on what was kind of in science and how they want to describe it and what have you, that's the deal. So the light reactions are occurring in the thylakoid. That's where the water is broken down and oxygen is made. And then the sugar part is made in the stroma, so the liquidy part with all the enzymes. That's where the carbon dioxide is brought in and turned into sugar. There it is. And then you can see where the light reactions are making ATP, and then something called NADPH. So NADPH is very similar to NADH, except there's a phosphate in there.